What's up, Airsofters? This is the officially licensed F1 Firearms PDW AEG by EMG. If you follow our channel, and you should, you'll instantly recognize the very unique, very lightweight design that F1 Firearms is known for. If you haven't seen our other videos on the other variants from F1, cue them up. They're worth a watch, especially the Demolition Ranch model. And not just because Demolition Ranch Matt is the coolest dude on the planet, and also has the same name as me, which is kind of awesome. This rifle right here is the shortest of the F1 AEGs, and therefore way more CQB friendly. Just like the other F1 AEGs, everything that's metal on the real F1 is metal on the Airsoft version. The body and handguard are CNC finished aluminum alloy that is an accurate replica of their BDR-15 3G receiver and the C7K handguard. The 3G and BDR-15 3G is for 3-gun. It's mostly a competition style rifle. As you can see, F1 is all about weight reduction. This is probably the most milled out receiver on the market today. Just look at that magazine well. I mean, it's barely even there. And it still fits magazines just right. Not to mention, it's also flared out to aid in faster reloads, which is super important in speed shooting. These lightning cuts in the upper receiver really show off that shiny mock bolt, which can be easily swapped out for the blowback bolt if you're really looking for that extra bit of realism and flair. The pick rail on top of the receiver is milled out for that extra bit of weight savings. No detail is spared by F1 when it comes to durability with regard to that weight savings. You don't lose durability while getting the weight down. This rail really goes all the way to the front of the gun, and that brings us to the handguard. This is the same length handguard that's found on the F1 SBR. It's comfortable, functional, and most importantly, lightweight. And yes, it does have KeyMod. The jury's still out on which one's better, and I hope you're commenting in the section below on which one you prefer. There are plenty of attachment options for accessories on the market for both systems, including KeyMod. Once again, leave a comment in the section below. Tell us which one you like better. Speaking of handguard epicness, nested in the handguard is an officially licensed Noveske KX3 mock flash hider. It works like an amplifier in Airsoft. These have been around for quite some time, and it really gives you presence on the field. If you want a tracer unit, there's also a KX3 tracer unit that would fit perfectly here where the factory one is installed, and that's also available from EMG. The controls on here are going to be very familiar to most airsofters that have shot an M4 or AR-15. The trigger has a flat face and a little shelf on the bottom to keep your fingers steady and your shots repeatable. The selector lever is ambidextrous and shorter on the right side for the comfort of right-handed shooters. Thankfully, if you're a lefty, you can easily swap these levers from side to side to, keep the stubby end from digging into your left hand. So swap them back and forth, easy to do. The charging handle is large and ambidextrous, and pulling on that reveals the hop-up chamber and the adjustment wheel. Now, if you veterans out there will notice that there is no dust cover on the ejection port and no forward assist. And rifles built for competitive shooting don't necessarily need those features, and it doesn't directly benefit an Airsoft replica either. So they've removed them in the effort to both save weight and to limit places where you can have a malfunction. This is just F1's pragmatic style to remove anything that doesn't directly contribute to weight savings and shooting fast. These F1 PDW AEGs come in 3 colors: black, blue, and red. Here we have the all gray F1 Firearms box made of cardboard. Let's remove the top. On top you'll see some open cell foam keeping the rifle nice and secure. And then of course the rifle is held in situ by this very nice dense foam. You've got your F1 Firearms warranty card, as well as the officially licensed monogrammed EMG logo and the high capacity magazine.
The F1 PDW uses the Silver Edge 1.0 gearbox system. This system is one of the most efficient out-of-the-box builds on the market today, only pulling about 11 amps. This means less stress on your battery, motor, and wiring, making the rifle smooth and reliable. The Silver Edge gearboxes use an electronic trigger system called the SDU, which stands for Super Dynamic Unit. This chipset monitors the amperage of every shot and will cut power if there's a spike in current, preventing damage to the system. There's a magnet in the sector gear for precise semi-auto functionality, and a microswitch trigger for improved trigger response. The trigger itself is similar to an Aries trigger. TM spec triggers won't work in this gearbox. Thankfully, the included trigger is quite comfortable, and everything else about this gearbox is compatible with TM style parts. The gears are 18:1 ratio and all ride on 8mm bearings. The piston has a ported polymer head, all metal teeth with the second tooth removed, and a bearing on the inside. The cylinder is ported, the cylinder head is polymer with a single O-ring, and the nozzle is metal with an internal O-ring for better air seal. The gearbox shell itself has some features worth mentioning, such as the reinforcement on the front, an anti-reversal latch access port, and exterior wiring channels to avoid having wires chewed up by the pinion gear on your motor. The E-Silver Edge gearboxes all feature a true quick change spring system. You don't need to remove the buffer tube at all to access the spring guide, but you will need a long tool to reach inside to access the spring guide. It is important to know that you can't remove the buffer tube without first removing the gearbox. This is due to a quirk of the design where if you try to unscrew the buffer tube before removing the gearbox, you can damage your wiring. Thankfully, you don't need to remove the buffer tube to change the spring. The spring guide has a bearing, and is somewhat unique in the fact that it has 4 tabs, requiring only a 45-degree turn to disengage, making it a little easier to work with. The E-Silver Edge gearboxes can easily be converted to electronic blowback, or EBB. This is accomplished simply by installing the correct proprietary MLOK bolt. By just removing this retaining screw and replacing the stock MLOK bolt with the EBB version, you can have a more realistic looking action when firing. Also of note, the inner barrel has 2 stabilizing O-rings on it, which really helps with centering and accuracy. The hop-up chamber is full metal and is a standard V2 design. Another thing worth mentioning is the ambi selectors on the E-Silver Edge gearboxes. They're among the best feeling and functioning ambi selectors out there. Where other systems might have some wobble or slop, this one is tight and responsive, and doesn't feel like it's going to break if you're a little rough with the selector. Lastly, if you're thinking about going HPA with your F1, you'll need to get one that's compatible with the Aries style EFCS, since the Silver Edge SDU has the same footprint and is compatible with HPA systems designed for the Aries gearbox.
Before we get into shooting, I did want to mention that you'll notice that the top rail's pretty bare. There are no front and rear flip-up sights included in the box. And while I do think it would have been nice to give you some sort of backup sight, most race guns really don't use backup sights because they place so much emphasis on the accuracy of their red dots. And this is a perfect opportunity as an airsofter to upgrade your quick acquisition abilities by getting something like an Avengers T1 or another red dot sight that can be zeroed and give you much quicker target acquisition on the field. Let's get shooting. Let's talk a little bit about ergonomics. Standard AR-15 ergonomics are on display here. You've got your standard AR-15 controls, pretty standard AR-15 grip, as well as an adjustable stock. Nice thing about adjustable stocks is it allows you to really customize the fit between the rifle and your shoulder, giving you the most comfortable shooting platform that you can. Moving forward, shouldering the rifle is very, very comfortable. Again, if you're used to M4s, you're going to feel right at home here. And I particularly like the softened area, if you will, of the handguard. That rounded section gives you a perfect place to place your hand while still giving you some accessory mounting positions if you choose to use those. And I will say that where I have the stock extended at my arm length, that's a pretty comfortable place to grip the handguard. I would like to have seen a QD point included or some way to make this a little bit more combat effective or airsoft combat effective. However, I have to remind myself that this is a race gun and it's built for race shooting competitions. And so a lot of the things that we're used to using and seeing on military style rifles are kind of unnecessary in that environment. With that said, I think the paint finish is nice and smooth, comfortable to hold and comfortable to use, and the fit and finish between the receiver, handguard, and all of the other accessories make for a solid feeling platform. It really gives you the sense that it's not going to let you down, even in harsh use conditions. One of the things I noticed while using this and transitioning shoulders, is how lightweight and balanced this platform is. Obviously, the lightweight comes from the huge amount of lightning cuts on the receiver and the handguard, and you might think that all of those cuts would throw off the balance. But what I particularly like about this platform is that the balance is right at the center point of the receiver, just in front of the trigger guard, giving you a really nice balance. Of course, I can't do it when I need to, but the balance point is just in front of the trigger guard at the back of the mag well. And that really even balance means target acquisition is that much faster because you don't have a heavy front end pulling you down or a heavy back end making your sweeps move faster than expected. And that balance gives you much more repeatable, accurate, quick follow-up shots. And I love that. The mag release is a standard M4 mag release. The magazine drops free, which is nice. You're not struggling with removing the magazine when you need to change mags. If you don't like the styling of that, you can always change that out, not a big deal. Besides that, your charging handle is going to lock back your imitation bolt to adjust your standard M4 or standard version 2, I suppose older style, non-rotary hop-up unit. Again, easy to adjust, and then the bolt release allows you to release that. Speaking of bolt release, one thing I found odd is that while they chose to leave the select fire control and the mag release black, they've colored the bolt latch or bolt lock with in red, the same color as the rifle. I really don't know if I would have gone with black, but I find it weird that the fire controls are like mixed and matched. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird. Let me know what you guys think. And finally, let's talk about the trigger. Flat face trigger, it's got some texturization on it, which makes it really nice and grippy, and they've got a beveled cut at the bottom to support your trigger finger because, as you know, in a speed shooting competition, fractions of a second matter, and if your trigger finger slips, that could cost you an entire match. Really comfortable for airsoft as well, and the added feature of having an electronic trigger with a momentary on and off switch as opposed to the sliding traditional version 2 shuttle means that your trigger pulls are always consistent, and because you know where that release is, it makes predictability of shots that much better and gives you much quicker follow-up shots. So you can ride the trigger and just feather it to get your shot off, which I really like. Other nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about half trigger presses short stroking your gears and locking up your gearbox. The problem with the old shuttle design is if you didn't get a full trigger pull in, sometimes you could lock your gearbox up and you'd have to have a tech break it open, release the anti-reversal latch, and then you'd be out for a game or two or a week depending on how soon you could get that repaired. Electronic triggers solve that issue by giving you a complete revolution of the gearbox with the press of the trigger. And you don't necessarily have to have a full trigger pull. Let's move on to battery storage. Standard buffer tube battery fitment. This fits a wide range of buffer tube batteries. We've got everything from a 1,000 stick of 11-1 all the way out to a 1250 longer style. And because of the adjustable stock, you do have some options in terms of length of battery. I will say though, if you're going to use a longer stick type battery, you're going to lose some of that adjustability. You're not going to be able to compress it as far. Don't worry, you don't need to remove the stock to insert your battery, although they've given you extended studs to do that very quickly if you'd like to. But there is a removable stud at the back here that allows the back pad to open to give you access to the battery compartment. It is wired to deans, which I appreciate. I will say though that the included wiring is a bit longer than I prefer, and so when inserting your battery, just make sure that you're tucking the wires in a way that still gives you the most amount of adjustability in the stock that you want. It may take a couple tries to get used to how to situate the battery and the wires together, but the fact that you can fit just about any buffer tube style battery, I really appreciate. Moving forward from our battery storage compartment all the way along our PDW, you may have noticed that the front end is a gorgeous KX3. Now this is a fully licensed Noveske KX3 muzzle device. This one is fantastically situated in front of the handguard, perfectly centered, and looks awesome. In addition to its looks, it also gives you the added benefit of having an amplification of your shots. Now, there's something to be said for sneaking up on your opponents and being as silent as possible, but I will say that that amplified sound, that popping sound, as you come around a corner, works really effectively at surprising your opponents. And I gotta say, it sounds really imposing. Let's hear it on full auto. Now, I'm afraid that you might not understand the warrants of that amplification. So I'm gonna go down there, see if you can hear me. Let's go farther. Let's go farther. We've moved out to the 50-foot line. I've got 0.25 gram BBs in the magazine and an 11.1 volt 1000 milliamp battery in the stock. I haven't cleaned the barrel, but we've set the hop up to get a flat trajectory, and I've zeroed my T1 to give us the best chance of hitting the A zone on these targets. Let's see how accurate our grouping is. Taking a look at our 50-foot target, you can see most of my 10 shots were in the A zone. I had a couple outliers at the C zone, but all of my shots were on target and were reasonably accurate. You could, of course, increase this accuracy by cleaning your barrel or going to a tighter bore barrel. But with this kind of performance, I'm interested to see how 2.5s will perform at distance with a little bit of wind that we have today. Let's head out to the 100-foot mark. We've moved out to the 100-foot line. Still got 2.5s in here. Haven't changed any other settings. Let's see how this baby performs at 100 feet. We're gonna aim for the middle target. That's 10 shots. Now I am noticing, sighting down the barrel, that the wind is playing a little bit on the BBs as we get down there. But 2.5s are a great ammunition for CQB, mount, and closer quarters engagements where you might find yourself using something like the PDW. Here you can really start to see the effect of a very short barrel at distance with the elements or wind. While 7 out of my 10 shots were still on a body-sized target, I think we're starting to see the limit of this barrel length at that kind of distance. And for a PDW, shooting farther than 100 feet may be a bit of a stretch. If you wanted a little bit more accuracy, there are longer barreled versions of the BDR-15 available from EMG. So if you're planning on shooting at farther engagements, you might want to check those out. If you want to increase the accuracy of the platform that you have at the given barrel length, you can of course always go with a tighter bore inner barrel or go with a heavier weight BB that's not as affected by wind at those distances. Now it's time for everyone's favorite portion of the video, the chrono test. We've got our X-Cortex setup, 0.20 gram BBs and 11.1 volt battery. Let's see how it performs. Now this is hovering right about 353 to 354. It's worth mentioning that when we first pulled these out of the box and we were doing our tests, we were getting consistently over 360. After putting a few mags through them, both on full auto and semi-auto, all of the parts started to break into one another. Everything kind of loosened up, not in the sense of being looser, but got into its groove, and we're seeing consistent FPS right about the 350 mark. With that said, if you wanted to guarantee we're going to be under 350 FPS, you could of course change out your spring using the quick change spring guide, which is very easy, convenient to do. So out of the box performance is great. It will break in a little bit, so if you pull it out of the box when you first buy it and you're noticing you're getting shots about 360, put a couple mags through it, let it settle in, and then take your chrono reading and decide if you want to change your spring then. Let's find out what this does on rate of fire. A very respectable 16.93 or just about 17 rounds per second, which is great for an 11.1 volt battery. Initial performance. I think that's just fast enough that it feels fast, but not so fast that people are going to be calling you out for having a DSG and lighting them up on the field. And wonderfully, it maintains its FPS even though it's on full auto, so that means you're getting a good air seal out of the gearbox as well. thought the best way to test the durability of the F1 PDW was to grab 10 random boxes from inventory, bring them down, put batteries in them, fill drum mags, and run them on full auto until either the battery died or the drum mag was empty. So what you're about to see is a test of durability without stopping, without taking any breaks, without modifying anything, plugging batteries in, filling things with BBs, and going full auto until something breaks. Or will it break? You're about to find out. So it's clear, I'm about to fire 10 AEGs for the next 20 minutes on full auto only. Enjoy. And there you have it, 10 F1 PDWs. 10 F1 PDWs pulled right off the inventory rack, 15,000 rounds, a combined 10,000 milliamps of 11.1 volt lithium power distributed between all 10 AEGs. And they passed this test with flying colors. Don't worry though, these will not be going back into inventory. We're gonna red tag them, because that would be ridiculous to put these back in inventory. So if you want a really good proven F1 PDW, check our red tag section. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that I would have done differently, or maybe some of the things that I would like to improve. Starting with the handguard. I really like the handguard. I think it's very comfortable. I do wonder how useful the KeyMod is at the very front, or what accessories that you'd put there that wouldn't be impeded by the KX3 at the front. And personally, I probably would have chosen MLOK, as most of F1's more modern rifles feature MLOK accessory rails. But really, that's personal choice. And if you like KeyMod, there are plenty of accessories out there for you to put attachments on them. If you're looking for more rail attachment space, maybe a race gun isn't your style. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that a lot of criticisms that I've seen of skeletonized rifles on AEGs is that you're going to get a lot of dirt in here. And yeah, that's probably true. You are going to get more dust and debris in here than you would with a fully sealed upper receiver. With that said though, I don't think it's a big deal to wipe out, clean up, remove the upper receiver, and wipe down the exterior of the gearbox. And including that in your standard cleaning regimen is not such a stretch that I think that it makes a race gun like this unusable or unnecessary. I think the styling alone makes that choice an easy one. It's cool looking, and it certainly warrants the occasional cleaning. And realistically, with a rifle this short, if it was mine, I'd probably be using it mostly indoors. Thankfully, there's a lot less dust indoors than there is outdoors, right? And finally, one thing I might change is maybe the grip texture. I wanted something a little bit grippier. maybe even more vertical. And the EMG slim grips are a great way to kind of attain both of those things, killing two birds with one stone. A little bit more realism, a little bit more vertical angle without sacrificing performance. With all that said, I think the EMG F1 PDW is a well thought out, well designed, well constructed, cool looking, and decent performing AEG that would be an excellent addition to any Airsofter's lineup. If you want to check them out in any one of the colors or check out the different lengths, those are all available right here at Evike.com. If you haven't subscribed to our social media, please do so. Subscribe to us here on YouTube if you want to be entertained or informed about the products and other things going on here at Evike.com. And if you have subscribed and YouTube has been hiding the videos from you, click that bell notification icon to be notified of our most recent uploads here on YouTube. If you want to continue to follow us on the rest of our social media, our Facebook and our Instagram regularly upload awesome photos and hold regular contests giving away awesome AEGs and gear like this from us at Evike.com. As always, make sure you're playing hard, playing safe, and playing responsibly. See you guys next time. These F1 PDW airsoft guns come in three colors. Black, that's blue, black, blue, and red. I do know my colors.